Welcome.
Thank you.
Questions for The Fall. Is The Fall an episodic or serialized TV series?
Well, The Fall is an serialized TV series because it's an ongoing story that doesn't just change from one episode to the other. So we learn more about the characters and the stories and the background of the whole idea of the show.
Describe Paul and the double life he's living.
Well, Paul is really a cunning killer who's living a double life because he has a family, he has a wife and two children, and at the same time he goes out and he spies on women and he tries to rape and kill as many as possible, and you can see that he's cunning because he didn't know how to strangle them, so he practiced his wrists and movements so he would be better at strangling. So he's really psychopathic, really.
Throughout this episode, what kind of development does Paul Spector undergo?
Well, at first we just assume that he's in love with Sarah Kay or whatever, that he's a lonely criminal or whatever. But then we learn more about him, and we find out that he has a family, and then maybe he's just someone who stalks her, who knew. And then all of a sudden he starts strangling her, and you find out that he's actually a killer. So that kind of changed our view upon him.
What is the major conflict of this episode?
The major conflict is probably the police versus Paul Spector, and I for one didn't think that Sarah Kay would get murdered at first, because I figured the police are on the case and he would probably be afraid, but he ends up winning against the police pretty much.
Does Paul Spector meet any obstacles when trying to murder Sarah Kay?
Well, he meets a bunch of obstacles, but whether they're that difficult for him to avoid, I don't know. For example, when he goes into a house, the police are on the case and they change the locks and tell her to go to her sisters. But I think that she makes it a bit too easy for him, really. So yeah, he just practiced strangling and worked out and all that stuff, and then he killed her.
False exits are used in the first episode to dramatically change the outcome of a scene. Can you give an example on this?
Yeah, sure. I think in the middle of the episode, after he's been in and he's organized her underwear on her bed, there's a scene where there's a noise in the house and she's sitting in her living room and she turns around and it's just a cat, and she pets the cat and it's all good, and then the camera just slightly changes and you can see him standing looking in the window, like really creepy. That's a great example, because you think that it's just a cat and then you find out that he's in there, changes the scene.
In the strangling scene, can you describe the effect on the camera angle?
Yeah, the camera angle is right down here, so you can see both her facial expression and you can see him wearing his mask and gloves strangling her, so it makes the scene really creepy. And yeah. So, what do we know of Paul Spector?
Well, Paul Spector is the main character in this episode, and he's a therapist and a psychopath, which likes to strangle girls and rape them. Also, he has a family, a wife and two kids, a little girl and a little boy.
Okay. So why doesn't the police trust Sarah Kay after her underwear was placed on her bed?
Mainly because she came home and was a bit tipsy, because she was out with her firm drinking wine, and she got home and talked to the police, and they don't trust her because she is drunk.
So what was it that the main character did for a living again?
The main character was a therapist,
Paul Spector.
Paul Spector, which helps couples trying to settle things up.
Isn't that kind of ironic?
Well, you could say that because he helps couples trying to do better things for themselves, and at the same time he is a psychopath and strangles women.
True, true. So when he tries to murder Sarah Kay, does he meet any obstacles on the way?
Yes, he does. After Sarah Kay find her underwear on the bed, she changed the locks in her doors, and the police is set on the case, so they have a close eye on her.
Right. So why doesn't she do anything more about the investigation? Shouldn't she be afraid or?
Well, in my opinion, she should be more afraid. The police says that she should go stay with her sister as long as this investigation is undergoing, but she just stays home. She isn't that afraid of him.
Doing a good job in the murder case, especially during the last scene.
In the last scene, the cops that met her first, in one of the first scenes, are coming back because I think they get a call from her that there's someone in her house. But when they go there, they call her once, and then they just say probably she went to her sister after all.
But she's actually being strangled. In that scene where she's being strangled, could you do you think that it's a good camera angle, or
Well, it's a good camera angle the director choose because you can see how frightened she is of him, and you can see how controlled he is about the strangling, and afterwards maybe a rape. But I think the director could use another angle, maybe from her perspective only, so you can see how her eyes are flagging and how controlled he is only, so we get a better perspective on Paul Spector.
Right. So how does he change throughout this episode, Paul Spector?
Well, he is definitely getting more controlled and more calculated about how he is going to strangle and rape Sarah Kay. He's getting more calm about the situation.
So if you had to rate the first episode from 1 to 10, what would you rate it?
I would rate it a bit high, but I would rate it 8 stars, I think, because the director has done a great job, not because of the actors, they aren't that good, but how he uses the angles and the story about it is really good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.